A quiet farmer finds 10 big bulldozers blocking his farm driveway one day. Men in fancy suits laugh at him, saying their new HOA owns the land now. What they don't know, this simple farmer is actually the mayor and owns the entire county. Their mistake will cost them millions. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. John Miller was a simple man. He lived on his grandfather's farm at the edge of Pine Creek County. The farm was old but good. John loved his quiet life there. He grew corn, wheat, and kept some cows. His house was small and painted white, with a long dirt driveway that led to the main road. The driveway was special to John. His grandfather had built it by hand 70 years ago. 3 generations of Millers had traveled that path. Every morning, John would walk down that driveway to check his mailbox. Every evening he would drive his old pickup truck back up that same path, watching the sunset behind his fields. John's farm sat on 200 acres of the best land in the county. People often asked why he didn't sell it to developers who offered millions. John always smiled and said the same thing: some things are worth more than money. One hot summer day, John was driving home after selling his crops at the farmer's market in town. It had been a good day. His corn sold out first as always. The local restaurant owners saved their orders for John's vegetables. Best in the county, they said. John was tired but happy as he turned onto the road that led to his farm. But when he reached his driveway entrance, he couldn't believe his eyes. 10 big yellow bulldozers blocked his way completely. They were parked in a line across his driveway. Men in expensive suits stood next to them, talking and pointing at the land. A large wooden sign was stuck in the ground: "Future home of Pinewood Estates, luxury homes coming soon." John parked his truck on the side of the road and slowly walked up to the men. He was still wearing his dirty work clothes and old boots. "Excuse me, but you're on my property," he said calmly, his voice steady despite his shock. A tall man with slick black hair and a golden watch looked John up and down. His suit probably cost more than John's truck. "Not anymore, farmer," the man said with a laugh. "This land has been approved for development by the town council. The new Pinewood Estates HOA has already formed, and we're starting construction tomorrow." Another man in a blue suit added, "We're building 50 luxury homes here. 3-car garages, swimming pools, the works. The old farms are disappearing, old-timer. That's called progress." "But this is my driveway," John said, pointing to the dirt path now hidden behind the bulldozers. "How will I get to my house and farm? I've lived here all my life." "Not our problem," the slick-haired man said with a smirk. "You'll have to find another way around. Or better yet, sell us your old farm too. We'd love to build more houses there. Phase 2 of our development." The men laughed together as if they'd shared a good joke. John scratched his gray beard. He looked at the bulldozers, then at the men. "Can I see your permits?" The slick-haired man, who seemed to be the leader, pulled a folder from his expensive leather briefcase. "All signed by the mayor himself. Now clear out, farmer. Progress is coming to Pine Creek. People want to live in nice houses, not look at your cornfields." John looked through the papers quietly. Then he nodded slowly and walked back to his truck. The men laughed behind him, making jokes about the old farmer. What they didn't know was that John Miller wasn't just a farmer. His grandfather, Thomas Miller, had been the founder of Pine Creek County. Thomas had donated the land for the town square, the first school, and the county courthouse. Over the years, the Miller family had kept most of the land rights in the area. John sat on every important board in the county, though he never talked about it. He attended meetings in clean clothes after washing up from farm work. He preferred his quiet farm life and didn't like people treating him differently because of his family name. And most importantly, John Miller was the mayor of Pine Creek County. Had been for 15 years. He just didn't like to mention it. He kept a small office in the town hall that he visited twice a week to handle county business. Most days you could find him in his fields, not behind a desk. Back in his farmhouse, John washed the dirt from his hands and face. He changed from his dirty work clothes into a clean dark suit that he kept for special occasions. He picked up his phone and made some calls. First to Sheriff Thompson, then to Judge Parker, then to Lucy at the county records office. "Lucy, can you check something for me? Has anyone filed proper permits for development on Miller Road?" "Yes, my road." John listened, nodding. "That's what I thought. And can you check who owns the watershed rights for that area?" "Yes, that's right." "Thank you, Lucy." John hung up and looked at an old photograph on his wall. It showed his grandfather standing in front of the farm when it was new. John smiled at the picture. "Don't worry, Grandpa. They picked the wrong farmer to mess with." That evening, John drove to town in his clean truck. He visited several of his neighbors, all farmers whose families had lived in Pine Creek for generations. He explained the situation and they nodded with understanding. By midnight a plan was in place. The next morning at 7 a.m. sharp, the developers returned with their workers and bulldozers. But they found something strange waiting for them. 50 police cars lined the road. The county sheriff, a tall woman named Thompson, stood with her arms crossed. Behind her were 20 deputies. "What's going on here?" asked the slick-haired man stepping out of his luxury car. Then a black official county car pulled up. John stepped out, wearing his mayor's badge and carrying a thick folder of documents. "Good morning, gentlemen," he said calmly. "I believe there's been a mistake with your permits." The slick-haired man's mouth fell open. You're the mayor?" "Yes, I am." "John Miller, mayor of Pine Creek County," John said, extending his hand. The developer didn't shake it. "And I never signed these papers," John continued, opening their folder. "In fact, these signatures are forgeries. That's a serious crime in this county." But the HOA approval." The man stuttered, his confidence fading. "Interesting you mentioned that," John said, opening his own folder of documents. "As the owner of 82% of the land in this county, I would need to approve any HOA formation. And I didn't. In fact, I never even received a notice about it." The developer's face turned white as the paper he was holding. "Also," John continued, pointing to the bulldozers, "your machines are parked on protected wetlands. That's a federal offense under the Clean Water Act. And if you look closely, 3 of them are leaking oil into the groundwater. That's another serious violation. The EPA takes that very seriously." Sheriff Thompson stepped forward. "We'll need these machines moved immediately. And everyone here will need to come to the station for questioning about those forged documents. Falsifying the mayor's signature is fraud." "You can't do this," the slick-haired man shouted, his face now red with anger. "We've invested millions already. Our investors are expecting returns." John shook his head. "Actually, I can. You see, my grandfather Thomas Miller wrote the original county charter. There's a special clause in Section 12 about respecting established farm properties. No development can block access to a working farm. It's been the law here for over 70 years. The sheriff's deputies began directing the bulldozer operators to move their machines. The developers protested loudly, making phone calls to lawyers and threatening lawsuits. By noon, the driveway was clear again. The police impounded all 10 bulldozers for environmental violations. Each carried a $50,000 fine. The HOA paperwork was declared invalid by Judge Parker that same afternoon. The men in suits received summonses to appear in court for the forged permits. But John wasn't done. This wasn't just about his driveway anymore. The following Tuesday at the county board meeting, John arrived wearing his mayor's suit and carrying a new proposal. The meeting hall was packed. News about the confrontation had spread quickly in the small community. "Ladies and gentlemen," John began, standing at the podium, "for generations our county has been known for its beautiful farmland. My grandfather believed that good land should be protected. Today I propose a new ordinance. All active farmland in Pine Creek County will be protected from development. Forever." The room erupted in applause. Farmers, many of whom had worried about developers pressuring them to sell, stood and cheered. The vote was taken. The Farmland Protection Act passed unanimously, 12-0. Then John announced he was donating 500 acres of his own land to create a public nature preserve, to be called Miller Woods. It would be located right where the developers had planned their luxury homes. "This land will belong to everyone," John said. "With hiking trails, fishing ponds and picnic areas. Free for all county residents, forever." More applause filled the room. Local newspaper reporters took photos. The headline the next day read, "Farmer Mayor Protects County Land from Developers." That weekend, something remarkable happened. Hundreds of local residents showed up at John's farm. They brought food, drinks, and tools. Together, they improved his old driveway, adding proper drainage ditches and fresh gravel. They painted his farmhouse and barn. Children planted flowers along the driveway edge. By sunset, John's modest farm looked better than it had in years. "We protect our own," said old Mrs. Jenkins, who brought her famous apple pie. "Those city folks with their HOA nonsense need to learn how we do things here." 3 weeks later, the county prosecutor brought formal charges against the development company for fraud, environmental violations, and trespassing. The fines totaled over $2 million. The company's reputation was ruined. Their investors pulled out. A month after that, on a rainy Tuesday morning, there was a knock at John's farmhouse door. The slick-haired developer stood there without his fancy watch, looking much less confident than before. "Mr. Mayor," he said quietly, "may I come in?" John nodded and led him to the kitchen table. He poured 2 cups of coffee. "Mr. Miller, we made a terrible mistake," the developer said, his hands wrapped around the coffee mug. "We didn't know who you were." John sipped his coffee. "That's the problem," he said. "You didn't care who I was. I was just a farmer in your way. You didn't respect the land or the people who live here." "You're right," the man admitted. "Our company has lost millions over this. The investors are furious. I've been fired as project manager." He looked up. "We'd like to make it right somehow. What can we do?" John thought for a moment, looking out his kitchen window at the fields his family had farmed for 3 generations. "The elementary school needs a new playground," he said finally. "The county hospital needs a new wing for senior care. And the farmers market downtown has needed a permanent building for 20 years. That would cost millions," the developer gasped, nearly spilling his coffee. "Yes," John nodded calmly. "About the same as your luxury homes would have made. Consider it your company's contribution to the community you tried to change without asking." The developer had no choice. His company's reputation was at stake. The board of directors approved the funds, hoping to salvage something from the disaster. Over the next year, the company funded all 3 projects. The new playground at Pine Creek Elementary featured state-of-the-art equipment and safety features. The hospital wing provided 20 new beds for the county's elderly residents. And the farmers market building, a beautiful wooden structure with a metal roof, became the pride of downtown. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new farmers market building, a local reporter asked John why he never told people he was the mayor and owned most of the county. "I'm a farmer first," he said simply. "Always have been, always will be. My grandfather taught me that land isn't just something you own. It's something you take care of for everyone who comes after you." The reporter nodded. "Do you think the developers learned anything from this?" John smiled. "I hope they learned that progress doesn't mean destroying what's already good. And that sometimes the person in dirty overalls knows more than the person in an expensive suit." The new farmers market quickly became the heart of the community. Every Saturday, people from all over the county gathered there to buy fresh produce, homemade goods, and to catch up with neighbors. John's corn stand had a special section at the front entrance. His crops still sold out first, every weekend. The Miller Nature Preserve became a popular destination for families and hikers. The trails wound through forests and meadows that might have been covered with luxury homes. Instead, wildflowers bloomed each spring, deer and rabbits made their homes there, and children learned about the importance of protecting natural spaces. And John's driveway? It remained exactly as it had always been, a simple dirt road leading to a small white farmhouse, where the most powerful man in the county still lived like a simple farmer. Every evening he would drive his old pickup truck up that path, watching the sunset behind his fields, just as his father and grandfather had done. The fancy HOA that tried to take over never formed. Instead, the local farmers created their own association, the Pine Creek Agricultural Preservation Society. They met once a month in John's barn to discuss ways to keep their farming heritage alive for future generations. They created scholarships for young people interested in agriculture. They held festivals celebrating the county's farming history. John's story spread to neighboring counties. Other rural communities facing pressure from developers looked to Pine Creek as a model. John was invited to speak at town halls and farm conferences. "Stand your ground," he would tell them. "Your land has value beyond money. Your community has strength beyond buildings. As for the luxury development that never happened, the locals still laugh about it." Someone put up a small wooden sign at the start of John's driveway, "Welcome T.O. Miller Farms, owned since 1889, respected by all, eventually." Even the developers had to smile at that one when they drove past on their way to build the new hospital wing. Years later, when John finally retired as mayor, the county named the main road into town Miller Way. At the ceremony, John just nodded and said, "It's not about having your name on things. It's about taking care of what matters." The slick-haired developer eventually started a new company focused on renovating historic buildings in town rather than building new developments. He often told people, "The best business lesson I ever learned came from a farmer who owned everything but acted like he owned nothing." And to this day, no developer has ever tried to block a farm driveway in Pine Creek County again. They all know better. In this county, farmers come first, the land is protected, and appearances can be very deceiving. When visitors drive through Pine Creek County now, They see thriving farms, well-maintained historic buildings, and a vibrant town center. What they don't see are cookie-cutter housing developments or abandoned farmland. They see a community that found a way to grow without losing its soul. All because one farmer stood up to 10 bulldozers and an HOA that picked the wrong driveway to block. Ian D. been the founder of Pine Creek County. Thomas had donated the land for the town square, the first school, and the county courthouse. Over the years, the Miller family had kept most of the land rights in the area. John sat on every important board in the county, though he never talked about it. He attended meetings in clean clothes after washing up from farm work. He preferred his quiet farm life and didn't like people treating him differently because of his family name. And most importantly, John Miller was the mayor of Pine Creek County. Had been for 15 years. He just didn't like to mention it. He kept a small office in the town hall that he visited twice a week to handle county business. Most days you could find him in his fields, not behind a desk. Back in his farmhouse, John washed the dirt from his hands and face. He changed from his dirty work clothes into a clean dark suit that he kept for special occasions. He picked up his phone and made some calls. First to Sheriff Thompson, then to Judge Parker, then to Lucy at the county records office. Lucy, can you check something for me? Has anyone filed proper permits for development on Miller Road? Yes, my road. John listened, nodding. That's what I thought. And can you check who owns the watershed rights for that area? Yes, that's right. Thank you, Lucy. John hung up and looked at an old photograph on his wall. It showed his grandfather standing in front of the farm when it was new. John smiled at the picture. Don't worry, Grandpa. They picked the wrong farmer to mess with. The next morning at 7 a.m. sharp, the developers returned with their workers and bulldozers. But they found something strange waiting for them. 50 police cars lined the road. The county sheriff, a tall woman named Thompson, stood with her arms crossed. Behind her were 20 deputies. What's going on here? Asked the slick-haired man, stepping out of his luxury car. Then a black official county car pulled up. John stepped out, wearing his mayor's badge and carrying a thick folder of documents. Good morning, gentlemen, he said calmly. I believe there's been a mistake with your permits. The slick-haired man's mouth fell open. You're the mayor? Yes, I am. John Miller, mayor of Pine Creek County, John said, extending his hand. The developer didn't shake it. And I never signed these papers, John continued, opening their folder. In fact, these signatures are forgeries. That's a serious crime in this county. But the HOA approval. The man stuttered, his confidence fading.